Everyone, it's Tim. Thanks for stopping by. So today is going to be another one of the book series, kind of prepping for how to be an author and how to handle writing and the different steps you got to go through, which I've done in the past. Most of it has been about how to do interactions with other authors, how to prep for shows, things like that. Today is going to be how to handle criticism. So this one's tough for me, and this is going to be kind of a rambling video. It's not really scripted. Just kind of bulletize things out. But what I want to go over is, maybe part of it has to do with my own anxiety about things, pride in your work, being defensive or, kind of past criticisms, and maybe it was delivered improperly, maybe it was received improperly. Criticism goes both ways. It's the person doing the criticism, and it's the person, feeling it personally, diving into their heart and their soul, something they created. So this is something I've had to deal with a lot. As a kid, I always loved to build things, draw, paint, not well, but paint. And, in my day job, I'm a mechanical engineer and I design things. Designing for engineering is very much a scientific endeavor, but it's also kind of an art form because there's thousands of ways to do the same thing, and there's different approaches you can take, different material selections, different design methodologies. So I get criticized a lot at work, and most of the time it's constructive, but there's some people who, maybe don't know how to give a constructive compliment on something where, they might say, oh, you should have done it like this. It would have been better. Well, maybe not necessarily better. Maybe just different. Everybody has a different way of going about it. There's pros and cons to each approach. That's what engineering is about. Writing is completely subjective, whereas my engineering work is very objective, and there's things that you can point out that meet certain design requirements, and they have different parameters that you got to follow. Writing is just completely freeform. You can do whatever you want. So everybody's going to have a different take on it. Everybody's going to have a different way that maybe they would have done it. And that's what can make writing and reading awesomely fun. But it can also make it terrifying if you're an author and you've never really received criticism before, whether it's from a family member, a friend, your editor, publishing house. If you're querying, agents can only take so many authors on at a time, so they have to reject a lot of people. And you gotta get a thick skin with this stuff right away. And what I had a hard time with in the beginning was having beta readers go through my story and hearing one tiny ounce of negativity come out of anything they said. Because, especially on my first book, it was the first time I ever wrote something longer than a couple thousand words and put it all together and unleashed it onto the world and crossed my fingers as I did it. I only had about two people, my wife and my I can't believe I just messed it up. I don't know where to cut this off. When I wrote my first book, The Dragon and the Whites, I only really had two people read it. My editor and his stepbrother Tom, and my wife. They were really the only eyes that ever saw it before it made its way out in the world. So even little things that they might say, my wife was reading it from a purely fun reading perspective, but she also has her teaching background, and she grades kids' tests, and she grades their writing. So she knows how to do that professionally. Tom was a professional editor for a long time. These are people who were paid to do this work. And when you hear it come from them, if they say something that you don't really like, you're like, why would you do that to me? Like, why would you hurt me? They're not trying to. They're trying to help you get the best product you can out into the eyes of the people who are going to read it later, who might not hold their punches as well as they may. And what really gets tough too is when you start incorporating into a larger circle of beta readers for arcs that go out, or if you have it reviewed by anybody, by periodicals. And then what can really be harsh is when you go to your first book event and people are just milling around, you're at your table, you're standing there, you're smiling, you're ready for them to come up. They pick up your book, they read the back blurb, and then they sort of just put it back and walk away. And you're like, what's wrong? Why didn't you want to read that? Didn't you love that story? I spent 4 years making that, and you just dismissed it with a 5-second skim. that can be really hard. I've done book events now for 3 years, and I've gotten a much thicker skin about it. When people kind of just walk away, doesn't even really faze me. I'll put candy out, they'll take a chocolate bar, walk away, and I just lost a chocolate bar, and I definitely didn't get any business whatsoever out of it. That doesn't faze me anymore. But it still is tough when people will read it and they'll leave a review on Amazon or Goodreads or something, and they say like, "Oh, I didn't really like the ending," and "Oh, you should have done this instead," and "How come this happened to that character?" And it's tough because they have a whole lifetime of experience from a personal matter, reading, their own creativity, all coupled into how they read your book, how they experienced it, and then what they think about it. And everybody's unique. Everybody's going to have their own thoughts on this. And the sooner you recognize that a negative comment, negative review about your book is having to do more with the person who said it and less to do with you as a person, and potentially even less to do with your writing itself, the sooner you can acknowledge that and move on and just take any kind of constructive criticism out of their comments that they said, filter it down, get something value added out of it, and then move on, the better that you'll be. Everybody's criticism has some ounce of value to it, and you need to find that as a writer, and then you need to compartmentalize it, add it to a list, and then forget about it. Lock it out of your brain until you need to go back and review that list. I try to do this for each book that I write, especially in my series. I try to make sure that any criticism that came from a previous book in the same series is at least corrected or massaged in the further books, that my series gets better over time. But you also want to take into account when you do new books, because you're going to develop as a writer, and I knew this from the start, that my first book would be my worst, even though at the time I thought it was my best. But if I get better with each book that I write, each page that I put down onto the keyboard, I'm going to get better as time progresses, and I'll be a better author someday. And I hope that each book I put out is better than the last, and that's the only way you can do this. If somebody's negative comment or even just neutral comment derails you right off the bat, you're not going to make it in this industry. And anybody who reads your book, whether it's a friend or a family, and they only give you positive feedback, I'd be suspicious of it, because that means they're trying to not hurt you and protect you, and they just want to see you have fun. But if they don't tell you anything that's bad with it, then you're not going to grow, you're not going to get better. And that's what you need to understand, is that they can give you negative thoughts and feedback on it, and they're not attacking you personally. They're not even really attacking your work. They're trying to show you some deficiencies in your writing, whether it's how you put the plot together, how you describe characters, how you maybe you boosted up one scene and gave it a ton of descriptive thought, and then you glossed over others. Maybe you should balance them out. Maybe you should give each scene an equal amount of description. Maybe you need to flesh out each character to a certain level. But at the same time, maybe you're going crazy and the book is going to be super thick and it's going to be too long and they're not going to want to read it. And they ask you to, water it down a little bit or approach it a little bit differently, or maybe cut whole scenes out. That was one of the hardest things for me, was when somebody would be like, "Oh, this whole scene could just go away." And you're like, I spent 2 weeks thinking about and writing that scene, and now I'm just going to chop it out and never use it again? That's rough. But if it makes a better book overall, a better reading experience for the buyer who becomes a reader, and they don't put your book down and they actually finish it and get to the end, that's awesome. And then even better, if they think it's so good that they want to go leave a review online so that other people can read their review and then want to become a potential buyer of your book and move on to becoming an actual reader, now you've found another person to share that with, and they'll hopefully be there to patronize your business as time moves on. So I'm going to stop rambling. I think that kind of covers it enough. But if you have any thoughts on criticism, how to give criticism, how to receive criticism and use it properly to hone your skill and craft, let's talk about it down in the comments below, and we can get a good discussion going. So thanks again for your time. I appreciate you listening to me. Hope you got something out of this. And if you haven't already, subscribe, and I'll hopefully have more videos out like this soon. So thanks again. I hope you have a great day. All right, bye.